Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Al-Unood Al-Hammadi, the Exhibitor Relations Coordinator. It is my pleasure to introduce our next talk, an Abu Dhabi art conversation with two internationally acclaimed artists, SUBODH GUPTA and BHARTI KHER. We're really excited today because this is the first time where we have the two artists on the same stage. Leading the conversation today, the esteemed writer and art critic Anna Summer-Cox. Hope everyone will enjoy.
Well, hello everybody. I must say it's wonderful to come to Abu Dhabi Art because it's my opportunity as the editor of the art newspaper, who normally spends a great deal of time sitting in the newsroom, to actually meet some incredibly distinguished artists who get assembled here once a year. I don't think people realize quite how incredibly fortunate Abu Dhabi is, because for this one point in time, it suddenly becomes a really extraordinary international center where very great people meet each other. For example, yesterday there were the three great architects of the future museums. And sitting on the stage with me are probably India's two most famous artists. And I hope that in the course of this next hour that we will find out together how they came to be artists, how they work, and of course the best thing that they can do is first of all start by showing you some of their art. So I'm going to ask Bharti, Bharti KHER was born in England, but to Indian parents, and has studied in England. Went to India in 1992, I think I'm right, and returned, as it were, to her origins because she decided to stay there, not least because she met SUBODH GUPTA, who is now her husband now, but the rule is nobody must ask them anything about their domestic life. They are here as artists, not as spouses, but it would be foolish to pretend that they were not married to each other. But Bharti, if you would like to go first with your art and tell us something about it and show it to us.
I'll do that. Thank you for inviting us here. It's nice to have you as well, Anna, and to meet you as well. I'm going to show just very quickly about 15 images. Both Sawal and I are going to do so. I think the point of this talk really was that we would begin a discussion about not just the practice, just about why and how we started making art, and perhaps our relationship to where we're from in terms of how we do our practice. So I'll start quickly. This is a work that most people easily recognize me for. The skin speaks a language not its own. It's a life-size elephant. It was made in 2006. I'd been making sculpture in India since I was trained as a painter, actually, and so when I came to India in '92, for about 10 years, I was making painting, and actually I had a lot of space to experiment and find materials. And I think when I arrived in Delhi, because I didn't really have very much that was very familiar to me in terms of what I knew, I didn't speak the language, I started to look at the ready-made, or I started to look at things in the marketplace. And so I found this as early as 1994. I went to the market and I was looking, and I found the bindi that looked like a snake. So this piece, I don't have details of the work because I'd rather show you more images of other pieces, it has a skin that's actually individual bindis that are stuck in white. They're like a snake shape. After I'd made the elephant, I was basically looking at how surface could transform perhaps an object, and something that was large enough in terms of the elephant, it was really about this idea of collapse, that perhaps this great mythical beast of the great cliche of the white elephant of India, this kind of symbol, was perhaps collapsing into the floor, and she was, with the bindis, perhaps being raised. So with this sense of kind of sadness, I suppose, there's this kind of there's a kind of positivity that comes out the piece. The piece that I made after, which you can see here, is an absence of assignable cause. It's my take on what I'd imagine the heart of a blue sperm whale to be. And so when I learned that the heart of a whale is the size of a small car, for me immediately it conjured up this fantastic image in my head of this great beating heart the size of a small Volkswagen Beetle, just standing on its own in a space. And so this piece is a kind of universal piece. It's like a great big carbuncle that's been dragged from the bottom of the ocean. And it really is a kind of symbol of love, and that's how I see this piece. It also, okay. So I'm not going to show the works in any particular order, just these are the works that I consider to be important in terms of my practice. This piece is called Or the Great Indian Rope Trick. I use animals a lot, or I've used the metaphor of animals in my work for many, many years. And I think what you can do is, when I make sculptures of the women, they're kind of animalistic, they're macabre, they carry with them something that's not about humans. And when I make the animals, I make them in a sense that they become not about animals, they become more about humans. And so what animals can do is they can create a sense of empathy. So this piece is actually an ode to how to kill yourself, really. And in India, many people hang themselves. So the Great Indian Rope Trick. So it's just a giraffe that's cast in bronze hanging from the ceiling fan. Dead Ruler, maybe 2007. All the works I'm showing you are between 2006 and 2010, so this was a period of, for me, a very strong period of productivity in terms of my practice. This work was shown in Paris. It's a skeleton of a great ape, a gorilla actually, and it's almost as if that you're reaching the point where he's just about to fall off the chair. So the chair is at a tilt, and the gorilla has actually been taped with duct tape to the chair. So it's about power and struggle, this piece. In the background you have a Bindi installation piece called Virus. This is a work that I made between 2007 and 2010. On the left you have the work as it's installed. It's a marble pillar and a small bowl, a golden bowl. It's a Tibetan singing bowl. And when you take these bowls and you rub the rim with this leather piece, this bowl will actually sing. These bowls are made out of 5 metals: copper, aluminium, brass, bronze, and tin or something, one other thing. And they're hand beaten. But inside I wanted to make just like the archetypal bowl of rice, and I always look at this work as a great anthropological study of the Indian subcontinent, because actually what it is I took the page of a matrimonial column, which in India people use to find their prospective brides and grooms. And for me, it's kind of an interesting page because it tells you everything about everyone. What color skin they're looking for, what kind of bride, how much money they earn, what family they're from, what caste they're from, how much money they earn. And so I took an entire Sunday, 28th of something, 2004 or 2005, and I got them inscribed. So I don't know if you can see, but is it a good slide? Each grain has been written by hand. So a lot of my work is very process-based in terms of even how I research projects and stuff, and also extremely labor-intensive. So the sleight of hand for me is a really important part of the work. The practice then becomes the process. This is one of the many sculptures of the women goddesses. I call them the Goddess series. I make, and this is from 2006. It's called "And All the While the Benevolent Slept," and we have a goddess, the greatest goddess, I believe, which is Kali, and she is the benevolent. She is the creator and the destroyer, and there is this work is made from is inspired from a 17th century Chinnamasta miniature, where Kali is in union with Shiv. And at this point of making love, she'll cut her head off, and she takes her head in her hand, and basically the blood that comes out of her head, out of her body, which is what these copper wires are really, then will then re-nourish and give sustenance to the earth. So she's like, in a way, the great destroyer, the great creator, and also a kind of mother in ways. She's holding a teacup with teeth. I should have put better images for you, but a teacup with teeth attached to it. So it's almost, for me, it was like, I do this every day, So this is an image of a second goddess. It's the warrior with cloak and shield. So all of the women's sculptures that I make are done from body casts, usually from people that I know. A lot of them are my friends or people that I see, or I ask, if you'd come. It always depends on what they look like. It could be their face, it could be that they have really long arms, or it could be somebody's legs, or it could be something, their hair. So she is, she's basically, this woman, she's standing and she's holding her own antlers, which go all the way to the back of her, probably twice the size of her. And although she's a kind of warrior, she's kind of covering her modesty with this banana leaf. Her cloak is an old shirt. And although she sort of wants to go to battle, it's really hard for her to go anywhere because she has all this heavy sort of baggage with her. The wok tree, this work was also made about 2007 or 8. This tree is about 5 meters long, and I'd made a series of works of trees. In fact, it's something that I continue to do. And the wok tree is also an image from painting. I look at a lot of imagery. So this is also maybe 11th century small painting, Persian miniature, of the mythical wok tree, which was said to have, which was of course the speaking tree, and was said to have the mythical heads of gargoyles and heads of the great shamans and talking animals that told you the truth. And so this idea of truth and what it meant, and the story was that Alexander the Great, as he was crossing Persia and Asia and reached the Punjab, he was told by his scribe that he needed to visit the wok tree. And when he did, he was told that he would never cross into India. And Alexander the Great was killed, was shot or wounded by a poisoned spear when he reached the plains of the Punjab, and he went back and subsequently died in about a year and a half. So it was this idea of the wok tree, this tree that gave you knowledge, and I just thought maybe it should be fallen over, so this is the fallen tree. So although you have the sense that there's faith in, or there's this idea of the narrative that goes through the work, there's also the sense that perhaps things are changing and we lose this sense of belief and wonder, which is something that I like to hold on to. Confess, matrimonial chamber. I don't have a detail of this, I'm sorry. But inside is, if any of you have seen my work in the fair, the Bindi piece. So inside this chamber are just 4 walls. And this room, I made it I called it Confess, because when I found this object, which was like this room, I thought it was a confession room. I subsequently discovered it was a matrimonial chamber, and subsequently since then I've discovered actually it's a chamber for the groom as opposed to the bride. Actually, you can't see this work from the outside. You can only look at it through the window. Not all who wander are lost. These globes spin, actually. So they spin very slowly, left, right, at different speeds. I think this work is very simple and it's very clear. I perhaps don't need to talk about it. Absence, dominate, saturate, the three chairs. I started doing a new series of work where I'm casting clothes. Clothes being a symbol for a sense of the person that's not there. So by negating the object, you create a sense of the presence. By talking about absence, you place someone very concretely in a chair, on a chair. So one of the chairs is a single sari, then there's 5 or 6 or 7, and one is completely saturated. So through these 3 works, you feel like this sense of time, perhaps. Make up as you go along. This is when I started to use the domestic objects. I've been using them a lot: chairs, tables, dressing tables, the mirror again. And it's the sense, these works are, this is about the 2nd dressing table I've made. The first one was called Belladonna, and it's that sense in the morning or the time that you start your day when you perhaps greet yourself in the mirror. And so when you haven't seen yourself for like, I don't know, a whole night, sometimes when you look at yourself, you're like, is that me? You know, it's like, is that me? Who's this person? And it's that, so this idea that you make it up as you go along, you kind of create your own sense of self every day, and you kind of reevaluate and relook at yourself. So this is a suite of mirrors. Reveal the secrets that you seek. It was shown in the Pompidou in 2010, 11. And these are old 15th, 18th, 17th century frames which we've kind of structured. Again, all the mirrors are broken, and this is a suite of one work. And again, it's about, I use the bindis as kind of like codes, and also to camouflage spaces, so that when you look at yourself through the fragmentation of the mirror and the way that the bindis are placed in these very kind of structured lines, you're there and you're not there, you're there and you're not there. The idea of the mirror being a way to find yourself, I suppose. A 4-panel work, which is part of the Parasol show that I did in London, from the beginning to the end. Not a good image. That's me. There you go.
Thank you very much indeed.
It's hurrying.
Before we get on to SUBODH, I just must ask something. I know that the bindi is the mark worn by Hindu women between the eyes. But what exactly is its meaning?
It's for me, I mean, it's a metaphor of the third eye.
Yeah.
So it's like it's supposed to create the space between what is eternal, real, here, and something else that you don't know. So it's a conceptual idea that you can then open your eye and see. And so when it's worn in that way by both men and women, you're actually putting on your third eye for the day, which is actually a really beautiful idea, that you have this other, which is just a marker. And with these specifically, I mean, it's just a piece of sticky felt.
Yes.
And so it's interesting to then, take it back to its very logical object. What is the nature of this object? But then you start to ask, what is faith? What is belief? That if I believe today that I can put on another eye and I can see things that I don't see every day, I can see my day differently, I can see you differently, I can remember things. So for me, they become like a residue, a memory of the day in the life of, say, one person. So when I make these works, they're really about plentitude, people. They're like maps, they're markers, they're leftovers, they're, like I said, it's residue and memory. And that's how I see them, but also, in a way, the action of making the work is very important. The repetitiveness, the fact that you keep doing it again and again and again, and the fact that it's kind of like this hand, the gesture of the hand, that you're actually then creating something through gesture. A lot of people think that the bindi is a sign for many things like marriage. It can be, but it's not what I'm specifically interested in. I'm interested in, and I think now, for me, I've taken it away from what it was. For me, it's also material. And so because I keep referencing my own practice through the work, I can actually turn it into what I want now.
Thank you very much. SUBODH. So GUPTA is based in New Delhi, as indeed is BHARTI now. But he was born in Patna and studied at the College of Art in Patna. But he also had a phase, I don't know whether before or after the college, when he was an actor and started by painting the posters for the plays that were going to be performed. which then set him off in a completely different direction. Subodh, would you like to show your slides now?
Thank you, Anna. Thank you, everybody. And I'm going to show you some of my work from, actually important work of mine, what I've done for last 10 years. And I will start with it's just forward.
Oh, sorry.
Oh,
I forgot.
You want to talk more?
I don't know. No. It's
Go
fine.
ahead. Tell me. Tell them about what you've done.
Oops. Okay, so this is a Hauser and Wirth in New York. So this staircase is about, in terms of scale, just so you get a sense of what it's about, 4 meters long. So it actually goes from the floor to the ceiling. And it's covered in black bindis. And I actually can't remember what the title is actually. But this is a part of a trilogy of cubes that I've made over the past 10 years. This is called The Hot Winds That Blow from the West. So these radiators were sourced in America, actually, and it was very fitting that they actually went back to America to show. So they created this kind of large, very bad carbon footprint, I think, probably, that went from India. They came to my studio, sat in the studio for maybe 6 to 8 years and moved many times. And this work is, in a sense, a failed project in many ways, because I think I could write a book with the amount of things that I was going to do with these radiators: heat them, cool them, stack them, turn them into working, thinking, moving animals that were breathing, making noise. And eventually, after 7 or 8 years, I just made this very simple column. And in a way, it's a kind of a nod to structuralism and to kind of minimalism. But I think I try and do that a lot. I think I try and make minimal art, but my work is really not minimal at all. It's kind of maximum sort of ways. This is the second cube. These bricks, I started making them in 2002. They're made from red glass bangles that have been burnt back into bricks. So first of all, we buy 15 tons of red bangles, and then we make a die. And then in the factories where they make the bangles, I turn them back into bricks. So this process actually took about 8 years by the time we'd got what we wanted. And I've just shown this work for the first time in London at Parasol. And the structure is actually held together because it's extremely heavy. So we've actually held it together with clay.
May I ask, did the factory owner think you were quite mad?
Yeah, they always think you're like an exporter.
Yeah.
This is fine because you just say, yes, I'm an exporter.
So you buy 20 tons of glass bangles, take them back to the factory and say, melt them all down and turn them into bricks.
And they'll just say, why don't you just color glass?
Yeah, yeah.
And so, like I said before, the process is really important. So the first factory I went to, he said, yes, I'm melting the bricks, and I found out they weren't. They were just taking glass, putting color in it, and giving me bricks.
He was cheating you. The concept disappeared.
Yeah, there has to be the pain.
Yes.
Otherwise it's not real. So there you go.
Okay, Subodh.
Sorry.
Please.
Yeah. I love Bharti work. And so I'm going to show you, like I said, some of my earlier work. And this is the first installation I did in 1997. It's called 29 Mornings. I'm showing you the detail because I don't have a good slide of all the installation shots. And 29 mornings, I said it because there is 29 wooden stools. And these stools is like in a village, it's like a small chair for the Indian people. I remember sitting on it, eating my breakfast, lunch and dinner. So some of them, my childhood memory, what is to play, and so that's why this piece is called 29 Mornings. This is a piece called My Mother and Me, made out of the cow dung cake. And several countryside in India, when you travel with a train, you will see this kind of architecture. Mostly you find it because they make it something like that because they wanted to keep it. The cow dung cake in India is very important. And when I first time start using this material, many people for cow dung, like anywhere in the world, human shit, dog shit, cow shit, shit is shit. But the way the belief changes the whole meaning of cow shit is amazing. So in India, suddenly when you talk about the cow shit, it's become like a holy shit. And suddenly the meaning it changes. And not only used for the ritual practice, same time used for the energy. So people, most of the India cooking food on it, so it's like energy, power, day-to-day ritual practice, many things coming together. And this piece is I made in 1997 in KHER workshop outside of Delhi, Modinagar. 1999, in the same place, I did the first performing installation for me. So when you see here, left hand side and right in the corner up there, myself, I'm lying covered with the cow dung. And the object you see, I bury in the field. And so it's like having a dialogue with the confession with the object material, what I collected from the villager in the same part. Actually, when I was in this workshop, I collected lots of the object and taken the photograph of the people. And when times come to make art, and I thought, what I'm doing, it seems like I'm a journalist. I taken the photograph of the people, I taken their objects, but same time I realized, why not where the object is coming from? I bury those objects in the ground and having a, like talking with them, so having a confession with them. This piece is called Cross Seven Seas, and I first made this piece for Badal Art Fair. And when I traveled Europe first time, and I was going via this part of the world, whenever I come from like Europe to Kuwait or Dubai or Abu Dhabi and going back to home, suddenly I see the whole flight is empty. And still I'm sitting in the flight. It takes 40 minutes to take off. And then suddenly in 40 minutes you find flight is full. Who are these people? Nobody else except my own people coming from my own country to work here in the Gulf, migrant labor. And quite interesting. Sometimes I used to talk to them. Who are you? What you do? Why you? What you doing here? And some of them tailor, some of them driver, some of them making the project in the building. But after 6 months, after 2 years, when they go home, they have a beautiful package. I call bundle in Hindi. And these bundles, when you see that, the way they tied it, a Louis Vuitton bag is failed in front of that. It's like, even you wanted to open it, you can't open it. Because it's a work. And you feel that pressure, the binding those bundles, then you realize how much they've taken time to knot these bundles. And then suddenly, always I thought, what they're carrying inside? But suddenly I realized, what will be they carrying? They work for 1.5, 2 years. When they're going home, they're carrying maybe toy for the kids, some clothes, watches, whatever. But for them, everything is inside. They're carrying their dream in those bundles. And that strikes me. And whenever and so this work made out of that. And that's why this piece is called the Cross Seven Seas. And same thing when they arrive in Delhi and they have the ambassador card, they put in the bundles in the taxi when they go home. It's I'm very fascinated with their bundles and the way they things do. So I was influenced with that to making this piece. This piece is called Everything is Inside. This piece is called Faith Matters. I work with the utensils for many years now, and This is the motor you see, and the top of the motors you see the lots of tiffin is like creating like almost like a city landscape. But this motor is like a sushi belt. It's a kinetic piece of artwork. It's moving all the time, moving. And but sushi belt, I put it not because, but it's wish I could have the video to show this work to you. What I was trying to say, the way the silk route, the spice route taken place, and how the food travel before the human travel. In India, most of the lower middle class family, they eat Chinese food. Chinese food is so common in the country, even rickshaw puller eat Chinese food, but they never been China. So what I'm trying to say, how the food connect the people, and how the food, even before the language, before you cross the border, how the food can bring it together. This piece is called There Is Always Cinema, and this piece first time I made in 2008 for Gallery Continuima in San Gimignano, and one of the related to this piece in the booth as well, in the Gallery Continuima booth, the series of work I made it called There Is Always Cinema. And there is a reason behind to making this piece, because Gallery Continuima in San Gimignano, the gallery is there used to be cinema, theatre, and they removed the whole seat of theatre and they made the gallery. So still the whole architecture of theatre exists, and quite interesting place. And when first time Lorenzo took me there, I saw he showed me one room where all the equipments was lying there, and that's how I got influenced with that to making this piece. Same work you saw it here in the booth. Again, this is the part of the There Is Always Cinema, like Italian roof tiles. This piece is very important for me. It's called Aam Aadmi. Aam Aadmi in Hindi means called mango man. And Aam means Amam. Amam means Janta. Janta means people. So like whenever the politicians talk about the common peoples means Aam Aadmi. Aam means Hindi is mango. So quite juxtaposing the word sentence together. And that's why I made this piece. This piece is casted in bronze and painted it exactly look like a mango. So, this piece is called Bullet because the infield bike in India is very famous and they call Bullet. So it's like a mechanized cow for me. It's a day-to-day cow. The people in the city who are living right now, before I remember in the village, there used to be cows to go home to give us milk. And the cowman will come and take the milk out from the cow and deliver to door to door. Today, in the city and urban life where we're living, the man come with this kind of bike and bicycle, scooter, and this infield, and they deliver the milk. So for me, it's like a mechanized cow. So I get very influenced for day-to-day life, that kind of things, and my subject is very influenced from there too. This piece is called Date by Date. It's like Indian bureaucracy. When you see the Indian office, when you see how our government work in our country, so we all know how things goes, and this is the taken work from there basically. This piece is called 1 kg wall, exactly 1 kg weight, casted in 24 karat gold, 1 kg gold as well. So, and this piece I was, because where we live in our neighborhood, today the war happening in the Gulf for many years, and so many things happen. So I don't want to make political art, but sometimes subconsciously, when you live this part of the world, you can't ignore that. And we all human beings, we know that what's happening in the world, and we can't ignore that sometime. And most of the war is not for the any other region, because most of the war about the power, about the money, and that's why I like war is like for the sale, and it's like how many war you want, 1 kg war you want, 2 kg war you want, 3 kg war you want, something like that idea came in my mind, and so I made 1 kg war. This piece is called Take Off Your Shoe and Wash Your Hand. It's a very Indian day-to-day philosophy of the Hindu culture, and the Indian kitchen, Indian food, it's related with that, this installation. So it's just in a kitchen cabinet, big installation made out of that. This piece is called Bhandar Ghar. First time the French artist Daniel Bourrain invited me to be part of it in Pommery where they make champagne in France. And when I was, he invited me to do the works. But for me it was very interesting. When I arrived this place, and when you go inside where they make champagne and wine, it's like a cave. And when you go down, you feel like a rat. And it's so cold, but it's so interesting. And what a place to make piece of artworks. And there were 25, 30 artists, all of us together, was creating artworks. And this piece is, I made it over there inside the Pommery. This piece is called God Hungry, and made again in Lille for the Indian festival in Lille. And this is the first piece also of mine. The permanent installation in Lille still exists there. So anybody cross by there, you must go and see this piece. And in the chapel where the clothes, but they don't practice, but they given me this space to make this piece of installation. So I did that. This is the piece, I just did it this year in Beijing, called Ray, in the part of the public art group show in Shanghai. Thank you very much.
Right, we've got about another half an hour, so this is the moment in which we can talk about your lives. And the first question I wanted to put to you both was, and you first, SUBODH, why do you make art?
Wish I could do something else. Because only one reason, I'm not good in anything else. And I believe this is the only, I didn't know I was going to make art. I have no idea. So when I was passed out from my school, I went to the normal college, and my subject was Principal Hindi, History and Psychology. And then I studied there 3 years. And then I thought, what I'm doing? I have no idea. So I was but I knew that this is not my place. And that time, like you said, I was doing theater. And I thought, I'm going to be an actor. And while making theater poster, a friend of mine asked me, you're making good poster, why not go art school? And that's how I landed up in art school. And everything began from there. But when I went to art school, after 2 years I felt, this is my place. And what I was looking for, even I don't know, but maybe what I was looking for, I got it. And that's how I start making art.
So essentially you make art because you couldn't not make art. You are drawn to it. It's you feel it is your calling.
Yeah, something is like a spiritual feeling. You don't know what you're going to do. And I drove in that direction where my heart was telling and something I wanted to do. And direction, thank God, was not wrong direction, right direction for me. So, no, that's how it began.
So you discovered this when you were in your 20s. Bharti, I gather when you were 6 years old and you said, I'm going to be an artist. Why do you make art?
I like making things with my hands. I really like, and it makes me happy. So I knew, I don't know, I just knew I was very lucky. I had a really great art teacher when I was at school. He was extremely inspiring, and he maybe opened a door for me very early on, and I just entered, and that was it, really. So I was kind of clear. It makes me happy. I'm really happy when I'm in my studio. So I think that's a good enough reason to sort of keep doing it. And then you realize that you can communicate perhaps with yourself. It kind of keeps you sane, I suppose. And I mean, there's other, esoterical reasons about what you should do and who you should communicate and all of that, and that's all further down the line. But actually, essentially, it's a calling, isn't it? And you just do it. You'll ask someone, why do you sing? Why are you singing? Why are you an opera singer? Why do it? Why do you make music? Why do you play the guitar? Because something's there in that space when you're on your own, or even when you're interacting with other people. It's that process that leads to when you start something and you finish it. I think the process is important as well as the final, what you come out with at the end. The fact that I like to touch things. I want to touch things and create them with my hands.
But there's this bit of a tragic aspect to some of your art. I mean, the hanged giraffe. And you said it sort of, as an almost an aside, many people hang themselves in India.
They do, strangely.
Is this something that, I mean, how was that the point of departure? Was that something that you had been worrying about, or did you feel that it needed to be expressed?
No, I don't know, maybe I just looked at too much Hieronymus Bosch and Bruegel and Goya and Velasco when I was growing up. So I think life's tough, isn't it? So, there's no reason as an artist that you don't explore things that you're not comfortable with. We're not here to make people feel happy about their day-to-day existence. That's not really your job. It's okay to, if I can create something which I thought actually was quite strange. To hang a giraffe is quite an anomaly anyway. It's a bit of a paradox. So there's a bit of humor in the work as well. It's not completely slash your wrists type.
SUBODH, you said you don't intend to make political art, or perhaps it was BHARTI you who said, but in the earlier discussion we were talking about the political implications of art, and there's a great deal of political art being made at the moment in the Middle East, deliberately political, I think perhaps because it gives people a voice. But in fact, there is political, there is a political meaning that can be seen in some of your art. Can you talk about politics in art for a moment?
I honestly, like I said, I don't make political art. I'm not many things to do in this planet as a human being. And I admire the people who come out, leave everything, and they work for the others. And they taken some kind of plunge in the life to serve the other people. And honestly, what they do, they do. I have lots of respect for them. What I do, I do. So I will not say in the visual art something politically try to make it and take the aware of the people and not working in the field what supposed to be, if maybe more than my art, physically if I go and serve, it might be better. So in that only reason I don't believe in so much in political art. But as an artist, same time you have like you saw my 1 kg wall, like you saw the Saat Samundar Par. It's subconsciously, you can't, we all living in the same place and we all aware about what's going on left, right and front. So same time you can't ignore that. It's become a part of life. And when politics becoming a part of life, you can't ignore it in art too. And that's how many artists or many people maybe are my artwork sometimes you see the influence with that.
And so, but how did you find your voice as an artist? You started as a painter, but you moved away into conceptual art. How did this? Was that finding your voice, or did you find your voice in some other way?
No, I always like theatre. Given me a lot. 5 years when I did theatre, it's really given me not to hesitate to experiment. So I always like to do experiment. So when I trained as a painter, I did 10 years paintings. But something I always like to experiment all the time, and still I do. So I think that's the only reason I make all kind of work you see in my practice.
Were you the first Indian artist actually to take the ideas of conceptual art and apply them? Certainly the West sees you as being that.
Well, that I don't know, but there's many artists in India working very strongly, very interesting works, and they're my colleagues, they're friends, and so I will not say I'm the only one.
And Bharti, how did you find your voice? Because you also started as a painter.
Yeah, so I think being in India for those 10, 12 years, and we were working kind of in the same studio, in the same house, just having 10 years to make really bad art for sort of 6 of those 10 years was actually really important, because we were just working every day, going to the studio, making art. And then I think when you know that nobody's really looking at your work, you can actually be quite free. So you have a lot of space then to try many things. And because for the first, in the early 90s, India was really virgin territory. There was very few galleries, 1 or 2, we were all friends. Everything had just started up. A place like KHER had just been initiated. That was 1997. And so, 2002 was still really, really early. It was very nascent. And that's when, SUBODH was one of the first who started. He was showing outside of India as early as 2000, 2001. But nobody had really heard of anybody. So I think you could just really do what you want. You could actually reinvent yourself. So I could reinvent myself, so could SUBODH. We both reinvented ourselves from painters to kind of sculptors. And I sort of taught myself how to make sculpture, basically, by doing it. So I don't think there's an epiphany of time where you say, oh, I found myself. Or I think it comes very slowly and you don't really know. And there's not really a sense of realization that there was a specific point in time. But it's more of a kind of, you remember the journey holistically. I think that it's all part and process of dropping some things, discarding things that don't work, and then just trying to find a language that belongs to you.
This may be an unfair question, and you may not know the Gulf artistic scene well enough to be able to answer, either of you, but it sounds as though there are some parallels between India and the Gulf in that the structures are lacking in the sense that there aren't the museums yet. The gallery scene here is new. Do you see any parallels? Do you have any advice for people? Do you, if you have anything to say to this specific audience on that?
It's
subject?
like I think the whole region, South Asia. We have an organisation which SUBODH and I are very much part of, and they've sort of helped set up Southeast Asian networks where you meet other artists from other regions. And so it's actually quite exciting, because it's like, I remember thinking when I came to India, this what London must have been like in the 60s. If you want to be a filmmaker, you can be a filmmaker. You just go and make a film. If you want to be an artist, you go and be an artist. You just make art. And there's nobody to tell you, oh, there's saturation, you don't have the experience, come back to me in 10 years. If you want to run a gallery, you just run one. You open it up and you run it as well as you can, and then you become a gallery owner. You don't need experience, you don't need a CV as long as your arm, you don't really need anything. So it's kind of exciting, because then you can create things yourself. And so I think that's where, in a place like India, that's where the energy comes from, is that because people are, in spite of the lack of infrastructure, in spite of the problems that we have, there's a lot of energy in a city like Delhi, purely because there's a lot to change, and so there's a lot to do.
But I will say Gulf is much more progress in the visual art, because the museum is coming here. We don't have India is such a huge country, we don't have a single contemporary art museum, not even one, till date today. So we lack a lot. China has so many museums right now, so much things is happening. But India, we don't have a single museum yet in visual art. So, and in the Gulf, you see so many museums taking place. And
I mean, they're starting.
It started, but some of them places already there. In Qatar or many places. So it's not like not happening. So I say in that way the people from here much more beneficial, no doubt about it.
You're both very, very well known in the West, and you have represented by very distinguished galleries, you're present at biennales and so on. Would it be fair to say that without the West, though, that you'd have remained entirely honourable artists working obscurely unknown? Does the West still need to discover artists?
You're right, Dana. I tell you one thing. When for an artist, for the contemporary artist especially, when we talk about the history, the West have a history for 300 years old, and we have a history for 60, 70 years old in India of contemporary art. And when we talk about like our senior, any single contemporary art student in the world, name it, without looking the history of name of Picasso, Van Gogh or Manet, Cézanne, without their study, how can their art study can complete? No. So for our Makkah Medina of contemporary art, no doubt West hold, because the great master who came and delivered to the world, and today we're very proud of that. So no doubt about it. And why should I deny that? And I believe in it. And today world is getting smaller and smaller. The things is changing, planet is changing, artists is changing, history is changing, and we can see that.
In, say, like, in India, okay, the contemporary or the modern movement would be post-independence. So that's what, 60 years old or 65 years old. But you have a history of, miniature painting and or specifically, I mean, the bronze casting of the Chola period, and then sculpture. I mean, that's all very rich, but perhaps in a sense, in a country like India, perhaps we're not so articulate when it comes to archiving. Yeah, we're not talking about archiving. But if you're talking just about contemporary art, yes, if I had to survive in India, I wouldn't. So when you're asking me a very direct question, unless I was working and showing and being supported and working with great galleries outside of India, I'd still be doing what I was doing in 1997 pretty much. And that's kind of a little bit, when you try not to remind yourself too much, because it's a little bit, and you also feel like, well, there's so much to do. But I don't always think that it's for the artist to be doing everything. So your job as an artist really is to make your work and perhaps keep thinking about ways to show and share your work and talk. And so we try and do a lot of talks. We try and help in setting up infrastructures or being on boards. And it's going to, it's changing in India, but it's going to take time. It's going to take a time and a huge impetus.
Any guess how long?
I'd say 20 years at least.
20 years.
Yeah, and
it's not like people is not
impetus.
there. It's not like artist is not there. There is people.
We've got great artists.
There is an artist. But something, we can't make it museum ourselves. We can't make it in infrastructure. That's government has to do it. Or unless the people from the power who come to make it something happen, then only artists, our job to make art. It's not like we can do everything. So it's not like there is an artist, there is a student, there is a enthusiastic, there is a art lover, but we need a more to.
There's a lot of artists in India, a lot of practicing artists, and it's a kind of I don't know. Is it a kind of psychology? I mean, if I compare it to here, there seems to be a lot of new infrastructure, like SUBODH was talking about, but
Coach, you must talk about the coach. What we doing it for our interest, because if what we can do it within our own range. So coach is an artist initiative work where the artists come and they work together and they create lots of artwork in residency. Many things happening till now for last 12 years. And we part of it. We always supported that kind of organization. What we can do, we do in that way. We must elaborate a little bit about the coach.
So it's, so things do happen in Delhi, India. So there are like a lot of really great individuals who, and everything that's kind of done in India is privately initiated. So it can be just somebody who's decided to run an art space. So SUBODH was asking me to talk about KHER. It's just it started in 1997, and it's an artist-run space for art's sake, basically. And so what we decided to do is first we decided to work within the city of Delhi, and then within 4 years we started to look at our region, which was Pakistan. So we were almost one of the first organizations to bring artists from Pakistan into India, and to kind of break this very cold war that had been going on for a long time, that no musicians, no sports people were coming to India for a very, very long time. So we fought very hard to start kind of like this South Asian network. So Bangladesh, we've just had workshops in Nepal, Kathmandu, Bhutan. So areas where there's also, so this is where, as an artist, if your work is specifically like me, and my work is not specifically politicized, but you don't have to be waving a flag, standing on top of a tin, saying this is what I do, but you're doing it in other ways because you're supporting or you're working with artists so that you can talk about and they can engage with other issues that are important. It's specifically in a region like Asia, which is, and we have a lot of issues. I mean, art or culture is not specifically the most important thing on the agenda right now. We have people who don't have sanitation, education, and school. So I'm not saying that that is a really important thing and therefore culture is not important. It's just that culture is looked at in India as an extracurriculum activity. It's not, they don't perhaps realize that it's a really fundamental part of how your generation looks towards the future and what you leave behind and what artists actually do as witnesses to a specific moment in time are almost the most kind of unbiased and fresh opinions in contemporary society, because they don't really work for anyone, they only work for themselves. So they're literally just watching. And often what they can create is just help people look at the things they see every single day just in a completely different way. So I think, it's going to take time for us, certainly.
I thought all these comments, I think, are very relevant in this context. I wanted to ask you something about what it's like to be producing, though, knowing that it'll be Westerners who will be judging your work. And do you think that you might be producing a different work if you knew that it was going to be going to Indians?
And I wouldn't necessarily say judging, because it's not that within India there is no critical response to the work. There is a very, very large and growing understanding and appreciation of contemporary art. I think now, especially within India, a lot of historians, writers have decided that it's time that they write their own history. And so it's very important that artists also have a sense, it's not just only about the art. The art world functions with writers, historians, documentarians, libraries, resource centres. I mean, there's so many things that come off. And also the way that the history of Indian art will be written it's very important that people realise it has to come from your own region. So if we want people to understand art from India, India's got to write that history.
I always believe art has only one language. And artists from anywhere, if you're making your artworks, it will fit in that language. People who look at the art, they know how to look at the art. They understand this is a piece of artwork. It could be done anywhere in the planet, anywhere in the country, and people understand. So there's no specific something. It's like a doctor or engineer. Art is just something you understand, and everybody understand who look all the time looking, and so it's not specific reason why art is made. Yes, definitely. If I'm living in India, of course I'm influenced with that culture, I'm influenced with that politics, I'm influenced with that atmosphere. So my art is coming from there, no doubt about it. And I think it's happening with every artist where they live and they work.
I wish I could agree with you that, that everybody can understand art. I think that actually art is incredibly informed by the precedent of the artists that have been doing things before what you're doing. And for example, if you're in the tradition of Marcel Duchamp, the found objects and so on, and you're a member of the public who doesn't know about that, you look at this thing and you think to yourself, what is it? I mean, why am I looking at a piece of machinery and this is being called an art, a work of art? I mean, I think that contemporary art, more than any other art of the past, requires a great deal of intellectual knowledge. I mean, I just suggest that as a counter argument. I wish I understood art. And I mean, Nick Sirota himself said that quite often when he sees a new work of art, he thinks, what is this about? It takes him a long time to decide whether he understands or not. I mean, I think contemporary art is tough if you don't have some points of reference.
I think we think it's easy sometimes because you do it every day, but because you have all those points of reference and you have the counter references as well, and you could sort of learned how to so-called read or see. But so is classical music. For me, I mean, if I listen to Hindi classical music, it's extremely complex, and if you want to enter, the door's open. You can come in if you want, and you have to kind of have something. If you want to come in, you've got to know a bit. You've got to kind of make an effort, I think. So. Yeah, read. I mean, I was interested when I first came to India. I was absolutely flabbergasted with the knowledge, with the level of knowledge of art history that the average Indian art student had. And I was astounded that they understood Beuys and what felt meant and what the fat was and why it was, what the references were. I was like, wow, they actually know more about Western art than certainly people know about us. So this is something that's kind of new, and this idea of the world, I suppose, now there's an interest. So it takes time. People have to. We just provide an image. And we provide a starter, and then the rest is really up to the person who wants to look. You can engage as much as you want or as little as you want.
So there you are. I think the thing is to approach something and have an open mind, try and find out. But as a dear friend of mine who used to write for the art newspaper said, honour the intention of the artist, whatever it is, and take it seriously, and then let us see whether you can work out and establish a relationship with it. You can't always, and sometimes it's not even worth establishing a relationship. Not all contemporary art is good. And I hate to say this, but the critics have failed us. There are not many good critics of contemporary art, I find helpful. Well, before we finish, I just wanted to ask you both something. What is your working day like? Is it easy making art? Go on. Reveal some secrets. How do you set about it? I know you both go to separate studios.
Yeah. My day is really, really regimented, actually, because I send my kids to school in the morning, and then I do whatever I do, go for a swim or whatever. Then I'm usually in my studio by 10:30, 10ish. And because I want to be home in the evening, to be with my family, or because I've got so many other things to manage, I suppose. And there's a factory, because I work in an industrial area where there's factories, so bell rings at 6:30 and I'm right, I'm out of here. And I just run. I mean, literally I leave because otherwise I hit the rush hour and it takes me 2 hours to get home. So my day is kind of very fixed, and I know it doesn't sound like that's what, but it actually works for me. It works for me because I think after I had children, it was really strange. I realized that I can actually do a lot in 1 hour. I could do a lot between feeding the baby and doing something else. You suddenly realize 30 minutes, you can do a lot in 30 minutes. So you're working all the time when you're an artist anyway. You're working when you're sleeping, you're working when you're reading, you're thinking when you're on the train, in the plane, traveling. So practical studio time is that. And I've been working sort of 6-day weeks for years now. But
so
now
in other words, it's discipline, discipline, discipline. Subodh, would you say the same thing?
Well, I go in studio every day, no doubt about it.
Yeah.
And I try to make, but most of the time, sometimes you make totally crap work. You know that you made bad work and you frustrated sometime. Some idea comes good, you make good piece of artwork, you feel very good, you feel very happy about it. So you are your own judge of your own work, and you are the first audience of your own work, no doubt about it. And I believe that's my job, to do that, and I do it every day.
Every day. So, tenacity. Well, thank you very much indeed, Bharti and Subodh. It's been an honour sharing the podium with you two.
Thank you, Anna.